Today is October 23rd, 2023. I'm here with Daniel Prescott, and my name is Jo Reingold, the interviewer. Hello, Dan. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So I have a question prior to these questions, and that is, what brought you to this position to be the leader of the JCC? What led up to it? What had you been involved in, and eventually became the president of the JCC?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Mine is kind of a very different route. So my brother and I were pretty active in the community. My brother and I always kind of split the baby. My activity was mostly Jewish day school, synagogue a bit, and really Federation is where I spent the majority of my time. And my brother had always really focused here at the JCC. So this was post his chair role at the JCC, and of course, as you probably already know, the JCC got in some really significant financial trouble. And I was actually in line. I'd previously been chair of Akiba Academy, board chair of Akiba Academy. I was in line as an officer at the Jewish Federation, really about to become chair, or chair-elect to be more appropriate, and I got the phone call. And the phone call was, the JCC is in a horrible situation. They need to replace all of the officers with new officers, and we need to kind of reinvent the whole J, and we need you. And I said, but I'm supposed to be, and this will be the second time I got pulled out of an organization from the Federation leadership line. And I was just concerned that these guys were going to think, hey, I'm not interested in the Federation. And they said, no, without a doubt, go to the JCC, help get that, and we'll put you right back in. Mm-hmm. So I agreed to come in. So that's really what got me here.
Okay, very good. So when you were leader and when you were president, who were the various leaders that you had to lean on during your tenure that you really relied on?
Well, as you can only imagine, when you replace an entire group of officers with a brand new group of officers, you're going to have some that maybe aren't so happy, and then you're going to have this close-knit group. And because we had gone through the battle scars, and we're still going through the battle scars of a JCC that was in really perilous position, we really relied on each other. So I will say Wendy Stanley, who was one of my officers, Alan Shore, Alan Perkins, who wasn't an officer but somebody who we relied on, certainly Jack Baum, Artie, who was fantastic. And then one thing about the JCC is all of the past presidents are unbelievable and open up their doors. They open up, willing to talk, have conversation, willing to share ideas, willing to come in and roll up their sleeves and serve ice cream and make donations and do whatever. It's really the most cohesive group of past presidents / chairs of any of the groups that I've had the honor of serving on. And they were all available, recognizing the kind of plight we were in at the Jewish Community Center at the time I was chair.
So when you came on board, what were you tasked to do, or in your mind, what did you hope to accomplish?
When I came on board, or when I came in as board chair? So
either way.
Okay. So I had never been on the JCC board before. I came in as the vice president and chair-elect under Jack Baum. Jack was in his role for not quite 2 full years. It was actually about 1.5 years that he served as chair. And Jack, myself, Wendy Stanley, Alan Shore, we all had, again, David Veter to a degree, Alan Perkins to a degree, we all had to focus. Because if you don't recall those times, and not everybody does, we were literally floating on red ink. We had to go to the foundation and ask for a loan and then forgiveness. We were paying payroll when we walked in through credit cards. I mean, the JCC was in a horrendous shape, and we really didn't know how badly we were underwater. And the number kept on moving, the number kept on changing. So my task was to be part of that cohort to kind of figure out a path forward and frankly to raise money. So my job typically is to come in and bring in revenue. And there was a very interesting board meeting that we had. It was one of the first board meetings after we stepped in as the new officer group, and it was incredibly well attended. All the past presidents were there, all of the board members, many of the staff. There was nobody that missed. In fact, it was so large we had to hold it in the senior lounge. And Jack said to me, he was the board chair, he came to me and he said, "Hey, I'm going to call on you for a development report." And I said, "Okay, please do." And this was after we had not even figured out where all of the landmines were. So he called on me for a development report, and I was sitting in the back of the room, and I walked up to the front of the room, and there was this whiteboard. Actually, it was a chalkboard back in the day. And I wrote on the chalkboard, fix equals trust, which equals a $sign. And I said, I can't, we can't, none of us can go out and ask for any money, any real money, until we figure out what the problems are and we fix them. Because then people will then trust us that the money they're about to donate isn't going to go into some sinkhole somewhere. And then I sat down.
That was your report.
That was my report.
Okay.
And that's really the focus that we had. We spent the first 3, 4, 5 months really trying to figure out where the problems were, where the landmines were, what we needed to do about trying to fix them. And once we started, and Jack was masterful at this, he and the executive board and Artie, but really Jack, I give him so much credit, he was masterful at helping us right the ship from an operational perspective, everything from camps to the schools and everything in between. And then we had to focus on trying to raise the money, and that's what we did. I will say there were some very interesting phone calls and some texts at 2 and 3 in the morning when one of us would send a text and nobody would even believe that other people were on the text line, and sure enough somebody else would respond, and then somebody else would respond, because none of us were sleeping well. We really felt like the J was potentially going to be padlocked, and we couldn't let that happen.
Okay. Were there any coalitions that you know of with other organizations, even outside the Jewish community, when you were during your tenure?
You know, not so much outside of the Jewish community. We didn't air our dirty laundry so much. You know, nobody really knew the kind of shape that we were in outside of those that were very close and inside the Jewish community. I will say that the Federation and the Foundation were fantastic. We had to thaw a little bit of ice to begin with because some of the previous requests that we had made, you know, advances on allocations, and you know, we just kept on asking for more and more and more, and we all had to kind of help make sure that they felt comfortable with the fact that we were serious about solving the problems. So it was more inside. I think the rabbis were very helpful because they understood that we were all, you know, it's one of those stories when you look back, you know, oh, we were close to where the J was going to have to close. Oh yeah, but look at it now. Now it was very serious, and I didn't have any gray hair before I started on that role, and then the gray started to show up. So coalitions were mostly on the inside, and then some very large donors, including, I will say, the Aaron family, and Jack, again, masterful at negotiating with Steve and Carol, mostly Steve. Carol was very supportive on giving us some leeway and some time and some support to help us get to where we needed to get to.
So you were very sharp-edged, focused on what was going on, but I still want to ask, was there anything nationally or internationally going on that affected some of the decisions you made here and that you were a part of during your era?
So we made a commitment during my term to host another Maccabi game. You know, in 2000, I think it was 15 that we hosted the second one, but we had to make that commitment 2 and 3 and 4 years before. I will say that we were concerned about that because it was you know, a big commitment, and we were just coming out of the fumes. We determined after the fact, I guess the numbers get bandied about, but we determined after the fact that we were about $2.4 million in debt. We didn't know that. And it took the 3B events. But during that time that I was chair, we actually went from red to black. And thank God we've not looked back since. And that happened. But, you know, the world was still a complicated place. Israel was still a complicated place. Financial roller coaster was going up and down and everywhere in between. But we did a very good job of staying focused, keeping morale up with the board, and it was a strenuous time on the board, keeping morale up with our officer group, keeping morale up with the professional team here at the J, which was also a challenge because they recognized what we were all going through. So that was where we looked more internal than we did external, because frankly we were forced to.
Looking internally, how did your administration help with increasing membership specifically?
It's very interesting because actually during my term, we could see 3,000 members. We could see it. We were at 27 something, 28, right at 2,800 membership units. And I said, let's make the goal of membership 3,000. So we did that. We also did some surveying of our members. We brought in Terry Sheps to ask our members what they were thinking. We hadn't done that in quite some time. What were they thinking? What were we doing? What were we not doing? Then we had the controversy of the kosher policy here at the J, which is, it seems like it's a controversy that continues to go on and on and on. And I asked Wendy Stanley to put together a committee to help us analyze the kosher policy. And I actually picked somebody who doesn't keep kosher to chair it because I felt like that would be something that would be frankly respected more by the report that would be delivered. And she did a great job, as she does with everything she touches. And we were able to navigate those waters and remain a kosher facility, even at the time that people were questioning, can we afford it? Is it something we should be doing? And so that was kind of a difficult time. But that helped with membership, I believe, because I think that the Orthodox community and the kosher keeping community appreciated the JCC for standing up to a policy that they knew only benefited a few people.
Did the building itself expand any during your tenure? Did they add on anything or take away from or anything like that? The blueprints themselves?
No, actually we were coming off of the wellness facility that had just been initiated from the previous first Maccabi games that we had. So that was relatively fresh. We didn't really have much of an opportunity to do anything from a capital perspective until the latter part of my 2 years. So one of the things that I wanted to do was kick off doing some renovation work in the lobby. We had a gift. It was a birthday gift that Steve Aaron had made to the JCC in honor actually of Carol. I think it was her 39th birthday. Carol, that's for you. And Steve had made a gift, but we weren't ready to implement. So we had a ribbon cutting and we went after implementing it, and we did some really nice fresh we freshened up the lobby and freshened up. Nothing like the capital campaign that needs to occur for us to really take us into 30, 50, and 75 years in the future. But it was nice to take that gift, put it to use. We did some work outside. The fountain was broken, and so we were able to talk to the family that had donated the fountain, the beautiful fountain that remembers the Holocaust in front of our building, and get that family. We negotiated with them to get them to help us put that in working order. And so we were able to fix some things and kick off that portion of that capital campaign, or that refresh of the lobby. But other than that, we really didn't, we were still just digesting the debt and getting through the debt. And that was the big focus. That was really the big focus. In a 3-year period, we took $2.4 million to black. And that's hard to do.
I'm just curious. How did you keep a lot of this quiet among the community so that people weren't scared or nervous or worried that the JCC might be going under?
Well, so that's an interesting thing. First of all, operationally, we talked to the board and to our staff people about recognizing that what stays in the kitchen remains in the kitchen. So when we talk about things at the board level, we kept it pretty confidential. But to a degree, when you're fundraising for a beloved institution like the JCC, you don't always want to keep everything quiet. So in that first B event that occurred, it was the first fundraiser that we put together that was at the tail end of Jack's term. And I went to ask the Aaron family if they would be honored, and we came up with a whole concept. We had a great team that put that together. We raised $1.2 million net on an event where we didn't have any gifts in excess of $18,000. Because we wanted to put the saving of the J squarely on the backs of the community. And in fact, we called it Save the J. It was important. We wanted them to know that this is something you can't take for granted. You can't have an institution as wonderful as ours and take the thing for granted or it's going to go away. So we put the Save the J on the backs of the community. We went out, we raised an awful lot of money, we had a tremendous amount of participation. Some of the discussions before the the first B event were so funny because I'm sitting here with Joni Weinstein and Carol recognizing that we're drowning in debt, and they're talking about for this big party we're going to have it all draped, and I'm thinking, what does draped mean? I have drapes at home. And they explained to me in the expense, and I'm thinking, do we really need them? And they would tell me to shut up, we need them. But you know what, it all worked out, and it worked out well, and $1.2 million net for an event like that without any $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 donors. Steve Aaron was unbelievable because he allowed us to go to their vendors and ask for their sponsorship in honoring the Aaron family. It wasn't honoring Steve, wasn't honoring Carol, it was honoring the family. Well deserved, of course, frankly every year well deserved, but the vendors at Stevens Transport really came through nicely, and I think we probably raised in excess of $200,000 just from those vendors, none of which were Jewish.
Fantastic. And the legend still goes on. We still have an event like that every year.
And the B events continue. So the second B event we had were the Beach Boys. Mm-hmm. And we raised close to $600,000 by having the Beach Boys down at the House of Blues. And then the next one was the Four Tops. And we raised about $300,000 and some odd with the Four Tops. And then, we handed it off. It was time to hand it off and let others run with it. But they kept the B still popular today, and we like that. That's good.
You've talked about so many wonderful things, but can you think of something specifically maybe that you haven't mentioned that you're the most proud of? Or whatever else you'd like to mention.
Well, listen, we kicked off a strategic implementation from we had a strategic plan, but we didn't have any time to implement it, so we asked Jay Lieberman and Glenn Geller to kick us off on implementing the strategic plan. Look, there's no one thing that I'm the most proud of other than the people. And when I say people, I mean not just the lay, but the professionals as well. To come through what we came through took a tremendous amount of time and attention, worry, rolling up the sleeves. There were days where I would start my day at the JCC and I'd end my day at the JCC, and I'm not talking about working out, I'm talking about meeting. There were some very, very stressful times. I regret some of the stress. On the lay folks. I'd start every meeting picking a different past president, some that had literally passed away, and having somebody do a little bit of 1 or 2 minutes on the past presidents, because I wanted to frankly build on the foundation of what brought us here, recognizing that, with trepidation we were forging the path ahead, but we came from good roots, right? We came from a strong foundation. We came from families and leadership, lay and professional, that helped us build who we are as a JCC. And I wanted everybody to get a sense of that at the beginning of every board meeting, so they recognized that no matter what we were dealing with, no matter how difficult the tasks were, we were standing on the shoulders of giants, on people that had brought us to this point. And we need to take that baton and get people to the next point, and then pass the baton on, but always be there to be helpful. So I'm probably most proud of the people, and I'm most proud of the fact that we recognize the past while we try to forge a future.
Do you feel that your next generation your family is going to carry on your legacy?
In their way, at their time. We're not shy about talking about philanthropy in our household, or talking about the importance of being involved. We think it's important for them to hear, but it wouldn't work if I tried to force feed it to them, or if I tried to push them in a direction or another direction. They have to cast their own shadows and make their own decisions. But I'm proud of each of them, and I do believe that they feel proud of being part of the Jewish community. And if that takes them to the JCC in the immediate future or down the road, if it takes them to the Federation or to Hillel or to High House or to a synagogue, wherever it takes them, as long as it takes them somewhere to be involved in the Jewish community, I think that's important. And I don't think you can have a full life being only a taker. I think you have to be a giver. And it doesn't mean just writing a check, but you have to give your time and attention because somebody gave it before us, and that's why we have the benefit of what we have. So I'm hopeful.
Okay. What else would you like to add before we close?
Well, I do want to say that one constant that occurred throughout all of this, actually a few constants that occurred throughout all of this were people like Laura Seymour, Carol Ronan, and of course Artie Allen, and I'm sure there are others. But those are constants, you know, the lay folks come and go. And even though we're here to support, we don't live and breathe it like the professional team does. So we are where we are today for lots of reasons, but for no other reason more than the professional team here at the J and what they still do, the example they still set, the care, the love, the time, the attention that they still give. That's the constant. And I don't think we can recognize any past chair or any period of time at the J if we don't also recognize that tremendous team that works with all of the lay volunteers and then sometimes in spite of the lay volunteers. So I do want to make sure that they get that shout out that they so richly deserve.
I agree. Thank you so much. Anything else? That's it, huh? Okay.
That's pretty much it.
That's it. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Dan. It's beautiful.